Hello there! Welcome back again to Void Dwarf Studios, everyone. As promised, this is the second part of the Eldar lore video. So, in their first episode, I talked a lot about their history and a little bit about their culture and how they are today. In this one, we're going to be talking about their military forces, how they fight, and how they're organised, and how you could play them on the tabletop. So, the Eldar. Craftworld Eldar, I should be specific here. Craftworld or Exodite World Eldar fight primarily to defend. They are very rarely the aggressor. And when they are the aggressor, it's usually to prevent something that's going to happen in the future. Like one of their Farseers or Warlocks has seen something of the future and they need to take out a specific target quickly before they can, become a Chaos Demon or something. That is one of the ways that they go about it. In terms of military might, the Eldar, as I've said in their lore video, are split into small groups. The Eldar they simply cannot do any kind of attrition war. They can't afford it. The Eldar can't afford to ever be pinned down for very long. Much like their Dark Eldar cousins, they just can't do this. If the Imperium, or any faction really, finds an Eldar craft world or Exodite world, then, well, if it's an Exodite world, there's not a whole lot the Eldar can do. They're just going to have to defend it to the best of their ability. If it's a craft world, they tend to flee, because they can't really take the casualties. It's just not feasible. Whilst they do have the technology of their Wraithbone constructs and using Spirit Stones, it's too much of a risk and too much of a loss if one of these things is destroyed. The Eldar just don't want to die, and so therefore if they do fight, it's for a very specific purpose. So, I will break this into their leaders, their troops, their specialised forces, and then sort of end it on how Eldar specifically might wage a war. A quick note here about Eldar armour and weapons. So, Eldar armour is, as you can quite clearly see, nothing like Space Marines, or any other race for that matter. It is designed to be lightweight, as much as possible, and flexible, as the Eldar are far better at dodging hits as they are taking them. The philosophy being that if you don't get hit at all, why wear the armour, The Dark Eldar take this to the extreme, but the Eldar have got heavily armoured constructs in the form of Wraith Guard, Wraith Lords and that, but the average Eldar is wearing psychoplastic armour. Lightweight, very strong, and very good at absorbing impact, but to an extent. It's better for an Eldar to dodge than it is for it to get hit. Now, in this video, you are going to hear me say Aspect Warrior a lot, like a lot. The Eldar specialise in any theatre of war. So what I mean by that is that essentially an Eldar is not allowed to learn everything, all at once. They are devoted to a particular specialism. It's one of the things that keep them from, the Eldar believe, from falling to Slaanesh, because they are focused on one particular goal. And once they master it, they move on to the next. And they will not deviate from it until they either die or have mastered it. So, on to their first and probably their mightiest of all the HQ choices you can take, an Avatar of Khaine. So the Eldar, with one of the shards of Khaine that, scattered across the galaxy thanks to Slaanesh kicking him in the groin so hard that he broke, is one of the things that can lead your Eldar forces. It is essentially a piece of their god of war and murder. When they summon it, usually via a sacrifice of an Eldar's soul, this being of fire and iron will spring forth and lay waste to anything and everything in its way, and inspire the Eldar around it to greater acts of heroism and valour and, bloodlust, all that good stuff. However, it is not something that will last very long. An Avatar of Khaine has a life expectancy, shall we say. It could just be that Avatars of Khaine, by their very nature, finding the biggest, nastiest thing it can find in the battle and fighting it, will either be killed or kill it. They don't tend to stay around very long. It is used as a last resort more often than not. But it is an absolute beast in close combat. And whilst against Slaanesh, Khaine wasn't able to stop it, a shard of cane is usually more than a match for a demon prince, or even a keeper of secrets. If we're talking tabletop, then point cane at the biggest, most irritating thing you can see on the table, and charge. And watch your opponent get nervous. But just make sure it's got some backup, because, you know, guns love to shoot at this thing, because, well, you don't want to get hit by that lovely fiery sword. So yeah, if you want to punch something in the face really hard, the Avatar of Cain is a good way to start. But on the whole, you're going to have either an Eldar Farseer, or you'll have an Autarch. So, starting with the Farseer, these are the psychic and spiritual leaders of the Eldar race. As previously mentioned, the Eldar are heavily psychic. They use it so much and are so connected to the warp that you can't really have a non-Eldar psyker. Every Eldar in some way or another has a psychic potential, and Farseers tend to be those who lead their craft worlds in council. You could think of it like this: the Farseer is the mentor, the guide, the advisor. They do lead armies, but they tend to be the ones that kind of advise how best to do it. They are the ones who can, more often than not, see into the future, and they're the ones who tend to pick targets that need stopping or forewarn of a potential disaster. They are very powerful psychers. You don't really want to get them into too much close combat, but they can handle themselves for a short amount of time, thanks to their protective runes on their fancy robe-looking things there. And on top of that, they can mess with people's minds, they can hurl lightning, they can do all kinds of things that can really screw up someone's day. You then have the Autarchs. These are your military leaders. Each Autarch has mastered every aspect of the Aspect Warrior. However, on the whole, they will choose to specialise in a particular aspect of war. So, for example, if you had one that was dedicated to the Striking Scorpion Temple, or the Swooping Hawk Temple, then they will specialise in those types of warfare. So, if you're a Striking Scorpion, it's about getting up close, really fast, stabbing them, and then backing up. If you're a Swooping Hawk, you descend from the skies, surprise, and overwhelm your opponent quickly. An Autarch can be in multiple flavours. So, as I mentioned previously in the History Lore video, the Eldar devote themselves to a single craft. So depending on what the Autarch has devoted themselves to, that is what they will specialise best in, and their tactics will revolve very much around that. It tends to be the case that their Autarch defines how their army functions. For whilst an Autarch is trained in every aspect of war, and can call upon many different facets of the Eldar army, they choose to be more of a general. They tend to stand back and direct their troops as opposed to getting into the fight themselves. However, do not make the mistake that a Autarch is a slouch in combat. As I've said, they've mastered every single aspect of the Aspect Warrior. They are not something you want to fight unless you absolutely have to. But again, make sure he's got backup, because he is only an Eldar, and so he is potentially quite fragile. And now you have the Warlock Council. They are a collection of Eldar psychers who've decided to form a coven. They work together, more often than not in groups of 3 to 5, although they can be in bigger groups, and they use their psychic might to help their Farseer. A Warlock is different from a Farseer in that they tend to specialise more in destructive psychic powers, whilst the Farseer is, I suppose you could think of the Farseer as more a Gandalf-y type figure, you know? They guide you, they mess with people's heads, they protect people on the whole, you know, they're more defensive in that nature. A Warlock is all about lightning, destruction, smashy, burn, crisp, psychic shenanigans. Let's be honest here, you take a Warlock Council because you want more psychic powers. You want more things to throw at your enemy, and therefore cause all kinds of lightning, misdirecting, illusionary, buggery, madness, creepiness that you can inflict on your enemy. These guys are great for causing chaos. Just don't get them too stuck in combat for too long, as although their witch blades are pretty dangerous. Again, sort of seeing a similar theme here, fairly fragile. Don't want to be in combat for too long. So if you commit them, make sure it's somewhere where you're confident they're going to win. And last, for your non-named HQ choices, you have a Spirit Seer. Now a Spirit Seer is a bit special. It's their job to essentially guide and summon the Wraith constructs to war. Spirit Seers walk a very fine line. They both are essential because without them it is hard to commune with the Infinity Circuit and speak to their ancestors, but also because, as Eldar are so prone to obsession, the more they spend their time in the Infinity Circuit, the harder it is for them to come back. Yeah, Eldar aren't overly fond of Spirit Seers, as essential as they are, because they view it very much like necromancy, you know? They're talking to the dead, they're bringing the dead, in a way, back to life through attaching the Spirit Stones to Wraith constructs. It makes them uneasy, but they are essential for the Eldar to continue. And a lot of these Spirit Seers have aligned themselves with Yined, the new Eldar god of the dead, finding an affinity with this deity. A Spirit Seer helps these constructs, see, hence the name Spirit Seer. A Wraith construct is relatively blind without the guidance of a Spirit Seer. This is because when your soul is put into a little gem, it's really hard to make sense of things like, 3 dimensions. You're basically a swirling vortex of feelings and emotions. What a Spirit Seer does is, because they have their foot firmly in both camps, they can see in the realm of the dead and in the physical world, they help guide the Wraith constructs. They help assist them, Essentially, they say, right, point this gun over here, fire. Hit here, now. They essentially make them more effective in war. And Spirit Seer also isn't too bad of a psyker, and is very helpful in a pinch. On the tabletop, you take a Spirit Seer because you're going to have a Wraith Construct army, you filthy Eldar player, you. And Wraith Constructs are tough, very tough troops. And when you have Spirit Seers making them even more effective, this is what this guy does. But, they are extraordinarily good at various other things. Like I said, they're psychers, so more psychic powers, more ways to screw over your opponent. There are, as I've said, several named heroes who can lead your Eldar armies in war, and we will name those heroes in the 3rd and final installment. Okay, we've now talked about the various Eldar leaders who are in charge of the craft worlds. Let's see more about the rank and file. The Eldar Guardians. Now, this is not a disservice to the Eldar Guardian, the comments I'm about to make now, because as troops they are superb. Like, an Imperial Guardsman wishes he had the equipment and the training that a Guardian does. The psychoplastic armor essentially gives them greater protection and allowing them the flexibility to, move, duck, dodge and weave as well as the Eldar can. And their shuriken guns, essentially firing tiny crystals, discs as they're often called. This disc crystal technology only exists within the Eldar craft worlds. However, 9 times out of 10, if an Eldar craft world or an X-Die world is using Guardians, things are going badly. And what I mean by this is that Eldar Guardians are the civilians. These are the craftsmen, artisans, artists, poets, writers that have been drafted into war. They are constantly being trained because aspect shrines are relatively rare, and whilst you will normally get 1, maybe 2 within calling distance, you're not guaranteed to get that many. And so Eldar Autarchs and their Farseers tend to rely on Guardians as the, backbone. But like I said, the Eldar risk essentially their population dying if they put Guardians in battle. Which is why, when they use them, they tend to use them as a slow retreating firing line. They don't like to get them into sticky situations because, if these Guardians start dying, then you're not going to start making new Eldar babies very quickly. They come in 2 variants. One is a close combat option, although that's not encouraged because the whole idea is to keep them away from the worst of the fighting. You will probably want to use your Guardians to defend, to hold on to an objective, and possibly to make a slow retreat. You can give them additional firing platforms so that they've got a little bit more punch. But like I said, they are not devoted aspect warriors. This is your average Eldar citizen fighting to defend his or her home. Now, if you are an Eldar Guardian, and you actually quite like being close to the fighting, but you also want that little extra protection because, dying kind of sucks and Selesh, is more than happy to receive you, you might want to be one of the Wind Riders. Now, the Wind Riders are an interesting unit because essentially they are jet bikes. The Eldar are one of the few races who have anti-gravity technology, like en masse. Almost all of the Eldar's tech when it comes to any form of flying is an anti-grav vehicle. They specialise in this. And, bonus, they come with shuriken catapults, basically a bigger version of a shuriken gun. And what you find is, you end up with units that are really fast, hit really hard, and can get out of dodge quick too. Essentially making them a very useful fire line. Because what you do is you send these guys around to shoot up some people, and then you just dodge out of the way. Perfect. And the jet bikes are not fragile by any stretch. They're fairly tough, surprisingly so. There are even craft worlds who've completely dedicated their style of fighting to match these Wind Riders. The famous Eldar craft worlds Siam Han are probably the best example of this, where they can field a ludicrous, well, for Eldar at least, ludicrous number of jet bikes. And they are so fast and so hard hitting that it's very difficult to deal with them. I've seen entire armies of jet bikes. You can have your Farseer on one, you can have your Autarch on one, you can have your Warlock on one, you can have... Nope, Spirit Seer can't have one yet. Okay, that's one less. But the point is, you can have almost an entire army on these jet bikes. And it's nuts! They move so fast and they hit so hard, it's incredible. They're not going to do great in a grindy combat, but that's not the point. You don't get jet bikes for grindy combats. You do one of two things. You dodge, weave and shoot, and then when you feel you're ready, you smash into your opponent. And it's so hard to stop. Now, we move on to the Aspect Warriors. So, first up, by far the most numerous, are the Dire Avengers. A Dire Avenger is the master of the blade and the shuriken. They specialise particularly in not being where the enemy thinks they are. What do I mean? So the way a Dire Avenger fights is they will shoot you to pieces thanks primarily to their Avenger Shuriken Catapult, a fantastic heavier version of the standard Shuriken Catapult, and then you'll run over to try and find them and they won't be there. They have an almost supernatural psychic ability to know where not to be, down to the second. This is mostly due to their fantastic and intensive training that is all about learning how to preempt your opponent, and as Eldar are psychic in nature, they can use their psychic abilities to effectively predict with a really high degree of accuracy how the enemy will react. And they are masters of unleashing a hail of fire, especially into heavily armoured opponents where they think they'd be safe. No, these guys can find the slightest chink in your armour and they will expose it. And then you might think, aha, I found them, I've pinned them, let's charge. But the Dire Avengers are just as good in close combat as they are at shooting. Thanks to, again, I think you're getting the general idea here, a tactical flexibility as well as some cool close combat weapons. They are really the best, most tactical all-round Eldar unit. The only problem I want to say about them is that they do not heavily specialise in one or the other. What tends to happen, or what tends to be the most effective, is you have one group of Dire Avengers with their Avenger Shuriken Catapults, like shooting away at the enemy, who will then retreat, move out of dodge, and then maybe a different group will take their positions. These ones with close combat weapons, waiting for the enemy to turn up, and give them an unpleasant surprise. Their main strength is the fact that they are very, very good at both, but you don't want to get bogged down. Again, Eldar, squishy. You don't want to get bogged down in a fight. That's why these guys specialise in not being where the enemy think they are, and then causing as much damage as possible. An Autarch would really appreciate having these in his army, in the majority of cases, simply because of their tactical flexibility. You can use them for anything, and they will excel at it. Now, if you like Wind Riders, but you want the upgraded version, you go for Shining Spears. If your Wind Riders are more about the shooting, dodging, weaving, then your Shining Spears are all about the charge. These guys deliver a heavy impact with their fantastic bright lances. These Aspect Warriors trained for years and years to achieve feats that humans just simply can't match. And considering that Eldar can live for thousands of years, that's saying something. They will meditate in the saddle, they'll sleep in the saddle, they'll eat in the saddle, they will virtually become almost one with their mount. And the Eldar view the Shining Spears as heroes. These are legendary Eldar warriors of great renown, and you do not want to get on the wrong side of them. If Wind Riders are a pain in the butt, Shining Spears are even worse, because they can actually hit you even harder in close combat with that fantastic lance of theirs. You see that lovely image of the Shining Spear shooting through an orc? That little white light going through the orc, that there is the laser blast that comes out of the lance. Yeah, just before this thing hits you, you get shot in the chest or the head by a laser blast, and then skewered for good measure. Yeah, there's very few kinds of armour that can resist this kind of impact, especially at close ranges. And if you're particularly unlucky, an Exarch, the head of an Aspect Warrior shrine, will have a Star Lance, a bigger, heavier, nasty explosion before you get hit by an even bigger lance. There's just no way around it. This is going to suck. And to cap it all off, you're dealing with a warrior who is far more experienced with being able to get out of dodge and also punch you in the face. But if you're not interested in all the speed and dashing around type nonsense and you want something with a bit more of a punch, then the Fire Dragons are your boys and girls. The Eldar don't discriminate. Fire Dragons are your answer to anything heavily armoured or anything you just don't want to see on the table anymore. They are armed with specialised weapons called fusion guns. Essentially, they're firing supernovas. It's the equivalent of a Space Marine melter gun, kind of, except more advanced, better made, and, well, superior in almost every way. The Fire Dragons excel at knowing how best to break open a bunker or how to incinerate waves of enemies. Typically speaking, you will want to have these Fire Dragons hiding inside of a Falcon Grav tank for transport, as because of their speed, well, lack of speed, it does mean that you need to get them a bit close for them to be effective. However, this can be countered thanks to their Exarch having a nice big weapon called a Fire Pike. This thing is basically the same as their fusion gun, but it has a longer range. They are masters of making things go boom, catching things on fire, and Space Marines will disappear in front of these things. Again, however, and I can't stress this enough, with all Eldar units, you don't want to get bogged down in combat, and these guys do not want to get stuck in combat either. You want them to pop out, shoot, and then get somewhere else, because if you haven't killed that unit, you could be in trouble. Now, I mentioned earlier the Dire Avengers, who have this uncanny ability to not be where the enemy think they are at the most inopportune moments. Now, a unit that really upsets people by never being where they're expected to be are the Warp Spiders. The Warp Spiders are a very interesting Aspect Warrior because the way they function is they have a fantastic little device, which is essentially a teleporter. It allows them to pop in and out of the warp really fast because they don't want to get eaten by Slanesh and reappear somewhere else. So you can imagine how horrifyingly, irritatingly, maddeningly horrible it is to fight these things because they can literally pop up anywhere. Your only hope is if you've got some kind of shielding, or at the very least the Eldar don't know where you are. They have the technology and the training to basically go wherever they want. And when you're fighting these things, you can't be certain that they're going to be there for very long. And even if you get close, they have the opportunity to just teleport out of range. And to add insult to injury, they can consistently shoot you with their death spinners, essentially shooting electrified wire, which slices through flesh and bone with ease. It's not necessarily going to harm a space marine all that much, but it's going to entangle him and really make it easy for him to get shot to pieces. They are perfect for dragging the enemy in whatever direction you like because they just can't be hit, they can't be bogged down. And that's kind of how they survive and how useful they are on the battlefield. We now move on to something a little bit more flappy, more flying, the swooping hawks. If the warp spiders are maddening to get a hold of, the swooping hawks are all about the surprise. They will descend from above, they will shoot you to pieces, and then they will fly back up again. Are you starting to get a general gist of why the Eldar are a maddening opponent to fight? Because you can't pin them in one place. Their entire ideology on how they fight their wars is do not get pinned down in one place. They can defend ground and hold ground, but the Eldar excel at outmaneuvering the opponent. And the swooping hawks emphasize this. Having both a mix of close combat and fantastic shooting weapons means that you can just fly around your opponent, hit them where they don't expect it, and then fly away, leaving them none the wiser and infinitely confused as to what's happening. And unlike the really noisy jetpacks that Space Marines wield, the swooping hawks are virtually silent. The only way you're going to notice a swooping hawk descend upon you is if you keep your eye in the sky. And if you're keeping your eyes in the sky, you're not keeping your eyes on the Eldar on the ground. And that's a mistake. The swooping hawks are all about hitting in the weak points, distracting, harassing, and then making the enemy try and find them when they've buggered off, as the Eldar keep doing. They are armed with heavier guns called las blasters, much more powerful than the Imperial Guard's las gun, and an abundance of grenades to make life even more unpleasant for the person they've descended upon. Now we come into some really nice close combat warriors, the Howling Banshees. Essentially, the way they operate is it's all about the speed of their charge. They have to strike fast, strike hard, and then get out of dodge. Again, like many of the Eldar units. However, our Howling Banshee has a fantastic ability called the Banshee Scream. Effectively, what it does is they scream so loud with a specially modified mask that it is impossible to concentrate shooting at them. So it means on the tabletop that they can charge in and you can't fire Overwatch at them, which is horrifying for certain armies, particularly the Tau, because that means the Howling Banshees can get into combat pretty quickly, unmolested, and then just go to town. Armed with exquisite blades called mirror swords and power weapons, which are perfect for cutting through space marines and anything else really, and shuriken pistols just in case something needs to be shot in the face. The only thing that they struggle against are things with a high toughness, so don't send them in against tanks, but troops, or elite troops, oh, they'll have a field day. They are perfect close combat specialists, and they excel at this. And now we go from screaming banshees to striking scorpions. The difference between these two, despite being close combat specialists, is this. The Howling Banshees, their whole thing is running towards the enemy over a short distance, using their Howling Banshee scream to avoid being shot at, and then hacking and slashing things to pieces. Striking scorpions, though not as nimble, are all about the surprise attack. They will hide in cover and jump out and perform vicious and surprisingly fast assaults. And out of most of the Eldar, they have some of the thicker armour. The point being that they are meant to grind away in combats a bit. They can take a little bit more fire and a little bit more punishment than the average Eldar, certainly more than the Howling Banshee. The Banshee's main defence is don't get hit. The striking scorpions are well aware that they are going to get hit at some point. Armed with shuriken pistols and lightweight chainswords, lighter, much more manoeuvrable, but no less deadly to the Space Marine chainsword, and their Exarch, or leader, being armed with a Scorpion Claw, a fantastic can-opening tool, especially against Space Marines. Yeah, power armor's not going to save you from that. This group of Aspect Warriors are brilliant at breaking over more elite units. Howling Banshees are good, Scorpions are better. Scorpions can crack most tough nuts, and Howling Banshees can cut away all the chaff. Combine these two together, like if you had some Striking Scorpions just leap out of cover and muller the unit, and Howling Banshees just sweep in behind, there is very little that's going to survive that pincer movement. Scorpion, pincer. See what I did there? I'll stop. Now we come to the last aspect warrior, and very different from all the others. The craft isn't the blade, nor is it the pistol. It is sleek aircraft. Some of the best you will find in the 41st millennium. The Crimson Hunters. These aircraft are fantastic in both the Void and on planet, so you don't have to worry about changing out between the two, and they are often used to escort Eldar troops to the ground, as well as just strafing any targets of opportunity. And they love pitting themselves against other races. The Eldar just see an Imperial ship or an Orc ship and just smile. Their ships are so superior in terms of speed and manoeuvrability that virtually impossible to catch them. It takes overwhelming numbers to tag one of these things. And thanks to their fantastic technology, their bright lances and pulse cannons, you will be sure that nothing is going to survive very long against this. Now the last true aspect warrior we're going to look at are the Dark Reapers. Even more heavily armoured than the Striking Scorpions, these heavy weapon teams essentially excel at the long-ranged firefight. Their guns are just gorgeous, and they have this beautiful skull death visage. They are all about causing terror from extreme distances, and their Reaper launchers have multiple options. Do not mistake these missiles for something big and clunky like the Space Marines or Imperial Guard, or even the Tau for that matter. These are small, sleek, sophisticated, but with all the destructive power of a nuclear warhead. You can fire pinpoint accurate missiles with the power of a nuke, or you can fire something much less firestorm and more tank busting missile. These guns will tear open heavy armor like butter, which is exactly where you should be aiming these, or really tough heavily armoured infantry units. If everything's going to plan, you will never ever see a Dark Reaper on the battlefield. They will be too far away and causing too much destruction. And the last foot-slogging soldier we will look at is the Ranger. Now, I say they're an aspect warrior. Even though they are specialised in their own right, they are not an aspect warrior. There is no shrine to the outcasts, the Rangers. They are called outcasts in Eldar society because these are the Eldar who want to explore the galaxy and don't wish to be constrained by society. These Eldar often make their own way into the galaxy, occasionally even meeting up with rogue traders or forming bands of pirates. But more often than not, these Rangers specialise in the long-distance assassination. They scout for their craft world and they often keep an eye on it even if they don't wish to return. They still care, on the whole, for their home planet. And in a tabletop game, these guys are, well, snipers. These are great for going behind enemy lines, picking off targets, and taking them down quickly before the initial attack begins. Now, their guns are a little bit cumbersome compared to the average sniper, but that just means that the Eldar make sure their shot counts. And when you have Eldar tech behind you, that shot is going to hurt. It's almost definitely going to be a kill shot, regardless of what armour you're wearing. Even protective force fields, such as iron halos and refractor fields, are going to struggle to stop an Eldar round to the head. However, once those shots are fired, you better get them out of there quickly. Luckily for the Rangers, they do have some amazing camo concealing cloaks that help blend them into the environment around them. And for additional protection, Rangers will often, in battlefield conditions, join into small squads, so that if one of them screws up, at least the others will have made a kill shot. And if they all fire at once, they then melt back into the undergrowth as fast as they can, because they're about to get a lot of incoming fire. And they wear very light armour, even for Eldar. Now, we had a quick look at jet bikes earlier, but let's have a look at one of the first true vehicles, heavy vehicles I should say, the Warwalker. Now, I know, it looks very vulnerable, doesn't it? That big open canopy and the very spindly legs, but actually it's surprisingly tough. This thing has a surrounding force field that protects it from incoming fire. The Eldar use these as heavy reconnaissance vehicles. They are always armed with 2 guns, usually designed for taking out either infantry or tanks. Eldar tend to use these for scouting missions or for guard duty, as the amount of firepower these things can put out is quite astonishing considering their size, and you can usually take them on the tabletop in groups of 3. Get them out correctly and you're going to stop a tank convoy, you're going to mow down infantry, thanks to their fantastic weapons such as their star lasers, bright lances and missile launchers. Oh yes, and star cannons, just in case you wanted a little extra overkill. These are piloted by Eldar Guardians. However, in keeping with the Eldar's love of subtlety, quick moving and not being where the enemy wants you to be, these walkers are very swift, agile and graceful, and because they are not nearly as noisy as a Space Marine Dreadnought, for example, they can be surprisingly stealthy. The Eldar will always prefer something elegant over something loud and bombastic. Often seen alongside the Wind Riders and Shining Spears are the Viper jet bikes. These much larger weapon platforms tend to be the heavy firepower that can crack open anything that the Wind Riders or Shining Spears can't. This is definitely not a vehicle you want anywhere near close combat, but is a fantastic fire platform, with many options for either heavy, anti-tank and anti-elite infantry weapons, as well as lighter weapons for dealing with chaff. A couple of these keeping pace with your Wind Riders and Shining Spears would not be a bad strategy, as whilst you should never get them too close to combat, they should be able to deal with things that the Wind Riders or the Shining Spears struggle with without getting in the way. Something I should mention before we go much further into vehicles. All vehicles are constructed from Wraithbone. All of them. Not just their tanks, not just the jet bikes. That includes their starships and many of their buildings and structures. The substance that the Eldar can grow and shape using the power of their minds. It is a psychically reactive material. Essentially, it grows. It's like a tree. It's an organic organism which the Eldar are able to shape. It is stronger than steel and is far more flexible. Right, quick side note out of the way, let's move on to some grav tanks. And they come in multiple flavours. Depending on what you're fighting is what form of grav tank you want, or it should be more accurate here. They are fire prisms, falcons, night spinners and wave serpents. Fire prisms are your premier everything kill tank. The fire prism itself is a devastating laser discharge that fires out of a crystal prism that amplifies the potency of the shot at a fraction of the speed. And what this does is it means that fire shooting through this crystal, you can fire either a concentrated beam that blows tanks and makes mockery of armour, or you can make it fire lots of smaller shots which, even so, pass straight through all but the heaviest of armour. The Falcon is the troop transport variant of the grav tank. This is a swift, dedicated transport that's easily capable of nipping in, dropping off a group of Eldar, and then when their mission is complete, getting them the heck out of Dodge. It is great for redeploying units, and the favourite tactic of the Eldar is sticking a group of fire dragons inside, popping them out, and making the enemy really regret where they're standing. Third is the Night Spinner tank. The Night Spinner is your perfect anti-infantry tank. What it does is it fires a interesting weapon called the Doom Weaver. What it does is it fires a net into the air made of incredibly thin monofilaments. This web is launched high into the air where it will land and cut and slice through anything it falls on. And because the strands are so thin, it is almost impossible to see. It is a brilliant weapon for removing large quantities of lightly armed units. And even up close, it has some highly accurate alternative functions. The last variant, and possibly the most numerous, is the Wave Serpent. This variant of the grav tank essentially is your standard troop transport. Whilst the Falcon can transport small 5-man units into the heat of battle, the Wave Serpent is there for your Guardians, your Howling Banshees, your Striking Scorpions, or any other unit of a larger size you want to get into battle. And bonus, It has a fantastic force field ability. The force field doesn't just protect the tank, it can be projected outwards from the vehicle, although this force field does have a limited time. But whilst activated, it is providing additional protection for your troops. This is incredibly handy, as Eldar really need to survive if they start getting shot at, so having that force field gives them just that little extra chance. And it's not lightly armoured by any stretch of the imagination. And given a multitude of different choices for weapons to deal with all comers, ranging from missile launchers, bright lancers, and star cannons, it is a well-rounded transport. Fast enough and quick enough to get you into the combat, whilst dodging incoming fire, with additional defences to keep your troops safe, and with the speed to get out of there. Now, I must take this moment to make a confession. The outcasts, the Rangers, are not the last foot-slogging troops that we're going to look at now, but they are the last ones who are alive, shall we say. This is a type of soldier that the Eldar will only use as a desperate gambit, because losing even one of these means potentially losing an Eldar soul to the warp and to Slaanesh. It is very serious and a dire situation when they lead these beings to war. We are now looking at Wraith Constructs. Wraith Constructs are Eldar souls which is removed from the Infinity Circuit. They've been attached to a frame made of Wraith bone. This psychic reactive material essentially fuses to the Soul Stone and allows the recipient inside to move again. The Eldar find this process abhorrent much of the time, as it is reviving an ancestor who was safely ensconced within the Infinity Circuit. And don't think for 1 minute that the Spirit Stone now within a new body is having a great time. Their sense of sight, sound and touch is virtually non-existent. It's very hard for them to see inside these suits. They can only use their psychic powers to feel their way around. And as they're relatively impervious to pain, unless the Spirit Stone itself is damaged, they don't really understand the world around them. This is why more often than not they are silent automata, only moving when they sense something dangerous. But whilst in these Wraithbone constructs, they are very tough. You will not find tougher infantry in the Eldar army. You can have entire armies of Wraith Guard, Wraith Knights, Wraith Lords, led by Spirit Seers, and you will have a very tough, grindy army. The only downside is it won't be very quick. But, you knew that when you were taking a Wraith Guard army, and you didn't care. It was about the choppy, shooty, and laughing as people try and hurt them. Your standard Wraith Guard tend to come in one of two flavours. You have your Wraith Guard, who are armed with Wraith Cannons and D-Scythes, relatively short-ranged weapons that require you to get up close and personal, but luckily Wraith Constructs are tough enough to survive a fairly decent battering. And then you have the Wraith Blades. Armed primarily with twin swords, known as Ghost Swords, these blades are imbued with Eldar Spirit Stones, essentially giving them even greater psychic potential, making it easier for them to hack through things. And the other variant is wielding an axe and a special force field, known as a Force Shield Deflector. The Wraith Blades are far more aggressive than the Wraith Guard. They are typically fused with Eldar souls who are more, pissed, shall we say, angry Eldar souls. It is very dangerous to be around these things, especially when there are enemies nearby, because whilst they are mostly blind, they are consumed by anger, especially when they sense demons or chaotic entities, and they will just charge straight for them, hacking, slashing and crushing anything in their way. The Eldar find Wraith Guard distasteful. A necessary evil, a necessary travesty, but unfortunately for them, or fortunately, the Wraith Guard also are fantastic shock troops, just not very fast. They're not going to get anywhere quickly. All our last entries are powered by Spirit Stones, in one way or another. So the next one we're going to look at is known as the Hemlock Wraith Fighter. Piloted by Spirit Seers and with multiple Spirit Stones inside it, It's almost like a mini infinity circuit. Essentially, the way it works is the Spirit Seer pilot communes with the Eldar dead on board. This, as you can imagine, puts an incredible strain on the Eldar and is incredibly distasteful and abhorrent for most, but it is undeniably an effective fighter, even superior to the Crimson Hunters. And its weapons aren't missiles or fancy laser cannon. No, this is all psychic power. The Spirit Seer on board uses his or her own power magnified many times over thanks to the dead crew on board, who are all working together to fly the ship, operate systems, and increase the psychic might of the pilot, and sends out a wail, a shockwave, so vast and so expansive it hits the target and kills them from fear. Yes, they are scared literally to death. This is a terrifying weapon, which the Eldar only employ in the most dire of circumstances. As if you lose one of these things, you're not just losing the pilot, you are losing several Eldar souls at once, souls that can never be recovered or rescued from Slaanesh. We're now putting our feet back on the ground with more Wraith constructs, although this time we have something a bit bigger, a Wraith Lord. These giants tower over their Wraithguard and Wraithblade cousins, and tend to have the more powerful spirit stones placed within them. When I say powerful, I mean that the soul within has a stronger connection to the warp, and more often than not has a greater will, a will to survive, a will to keep going. So much so that they will often summon Wraithlords to War Council meetings for their advice. Though they cannot speak, they can communicate telepathically. Only a truly great hero from the Eldar's past inhabits one of these Wraithlord constructs, and they can be kitted out to specialise how they used to fight in life. For example, if this Wraithlord preferred the blood and gore of close combat, then they will equip it with ghost glaives and force fields to better protect it and better allow it to do the thing it does best. If they were more of a Dark Reaper, shall we say, in life, then a devastating array of heavy weapons can be attached to its shoulders, giving its hands free to punch anyone stupid enough to come and stop it. Even a Wraithguard is strong enough to punch its fist through solid steel, and Wraithbone has often been attributed to being tougher than adamantium, one of the hardest materials in the 40k universe. A Wraithlord, more often than not, is always accompanied by a Spirit Seer, mostly because they rely on them to help them see and fight more effectively. Same as the Wraithguard of Wraithblades, without a Spirit Seer nearby, they are virtually blind. They can only see through feeling their surroundings, using their psychic potential to feel their way around. And even then, it's very limited and very difficult for them to track where the enemy is. And now we come to one of the units that I personally find one of the most tragic, as it involves twins, and I happen to be one. And I really don't like what happens to the poor Eldar inside this construct. Wraith Knights are even bigger than Wraithlords. They tower over them still, and they are more than a match for demon princes or greater demons. However, this power came at a great cost. For the Eldar, or Eldari, I've been calling them Eldar throughout this whole video, but I know technically they are also called Eldari now, but anyway, diversion. An Eldar twin has a great psychic connection with one another. It is unique among the Eldar race and prized highly. The Eldar can literally read each other's minds if they're a twin, and there is a deep bond and connection that goes beyond the physical. They are almost one being. However, this bond is so strong that if one of the Eldar twins is mortally wounded or dies, the other feels it deeply. The essence of the dead twin is placed inside of a Wraith Knight, and the other twin is then placed within the Wraith Knight itself, assisting in piloting it, and more often than not will remain within the Wraith Knight for the rest of their lives. Because of this great psychic link between the two, it is a flawless union. The psychic power allows the suit to move gracefully, far faster than an Imperial Knight, and able to keep pace with even demons. And they have more than enough punch to make sure that they can take down anything in their way, with plasma cannons and ginormous ghost glaives, scatter shields that allow them to defend themselves from incoming fire. They are exemplars, heroes even amongst the Eldar people, tragic heroes. And they are more often than not at the forefront of Eldar trying to seek new spirit stones, explore lost webways. A Wraith Knight or two is an invaluable asset. Although there are dark rumours that sometimes when you really need a Wraith Knight pilot and you've only got a small quantity of twins, none of whom obviously wish to die, then some of the Eldar have taken matters into their own hands. Desperate times call for desperate measures and all that. However, it has to be said, especially on the tabletop, that a Wraith Knight is a very difficult construct to destroy and stop. You need big guns or something truly powerful to take this thing down. Oh, do you see now why I split this into 3? Like, if I try and do this all in one go, this video would probably be over 3 hours long. Oof, I'm knackered. I don't know how some people do this. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed it though. I certainly did. And I think now people will have a good idea about how an Eldar army fights. Really, the Eldar's best strength is their ability to outmaneuver their opponent. They can outgrind, they can punch really hard in the face and stay in the close combat, but they excel at essentially outmaneuvering an opponent, making an opponent go where you want, and then catching them by surprise. In the third and final installment, I will go into their named characters, give you a little bit of their backstory, tell you a little bit about them, and yeah, this might have to become a 4-part series if I can't fit it all in one. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. If so, please like and comment down below. If not, please like and comment down below and let me know what I could perhaps do differently. Wherever you are, take care everyone.